Every neighborhood has its secrets. Some hide them behind fences, others behind friendly smiles. But Oak Ridge Meadows, this quiet, pristine suburban community, hid its darkness in plain sight. At first glance, Oak Ridge Meadows looked like paradise. Rows of identical houses, freshly painted fences, manicured lawns that could rival golf courses. Children rode bicycles down smooth pavements, neighbors waved from driveways, and every morning felt like a scene from a real estate commercial. But beneath the perfect facade was an invisible leash, the Homeowners Association, or HOA. It controlled everything. The height of your grass, the color of your curtains, even the type of flowers allowed in your garden. To outsiders, it was organization. To residents, it was silent domination. This is the story of how one man's quiet backyard project exposed that hidden control, how an ordinary homeowner's fight against his HOA spiraled into a nationwide scandal. Before we dive in, take a moment. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you love gripping HOA stories, don't forget to subscribe for more real-life suburban dramas just like this. Now, let's begin. Daniel Carter moved to Oak Ridge Meadows 5 years ago, drawn by the promise of peace and order. He wanted a place where he could raise his daughter safely, where every street felt calm. For years, he followed every rule, mowed the lawn, repainted the shutters, attended every HOA meeting. But one simple decision would change all that. Daniel wanted to build a small backyard deck with a hot tub. A modest addition, nothing loud, nothing fancy. Just a peaceful space to unwind after long workdays. The project began quietly, with a few boards and tools stacked neatly by the fence. But in Oak Ridge Meadows, nothing went unnoticed. Within days, neighbors whispered. Cars slowed as they passed his home. And then came the first letter, a thick envelope bearing the HOA seal. Inside, a single page, cease and desist all unapproved backyard modifications immediately. Daniel read it twice, confused. He wasn't breaking any real rules, or so he thought. The HOA claimed he hadn't filed a design approval form, a document buried deep in the association's regulations. Still, he believed it was a misunderstanding. He kept working. The next day, a new notice appeared, this time nailed to his backyard fence. It cited violation of Covenant 14A and warned of escalating fines. A neighbor mentioned that the HOA president herself, Karen Mitchell, had driven by earlier, clipboard in hand. Karen was known for her precision. She measured grass, photographed fences, and believed the HOA's power kept Oak Ridge Meadows perfect. To her, Daniel's deck was an infection threatening that perfection. Soon, Daniel's simple backyard project became public enemy number one. Within a week, he returned home from work to find something shocking. A heavy chain strung across his backyard gate, secured with a padlock. Attached was a sign, restricted access, under HOA review. They had blocked his backyard. Neighbors pretended not to notice. Some pitied him. Others feared him. The once friendly community had gone silent. That night, Daniel stood at his window staring at the locked gate. He realized he wasn't just facing a rule, he was facing a machine built to control. And what started as a simple deck project was about to explode into something far bigger than anyone in Oak Ridge Meadows could imagine. The battle for his backyard had just begun. When the HOA blocks your property, they don't just build fences, they build fear. The following morning, the news of Daniel's violation spread like wildfire through Oak Ridge Meadows. Some residents whispered that he'd broken the law. Others avoided eye contact altogether. But the truth was simpler and scarier. The HOA had overstepped, and no one dared to say a word. Daniel woke up each day to find new letters on his doorstep, warnings, fines, and threats of legal action. The language was cold, bureaucratic, designed to intimidate. Meanwhile, his backyard sat untouched, sealed behind that padlock. The deck remained half-built, would beginning to warp under the summer heat. The once lively garden looked abandoned. But Daniel was done being quiet. He began documenting everything. Photos, videos, letters. He kept meticulous evidence. At first, it was just for his own protection. But one night, on impulse, he uploaded a short video online titled, My HOA blocked my backyard, here's what they did. The video showed the chain, the lock, the sign. No anger, no shouting, just calm narration and proof. Within 24 hours, it went viral. Tens of thousands of views. Comments poured in from around the world. Homeowners sharing their own horror stories, neighbors expressing outrage, and people demanding accountability. For the first time, the power dynamic shifted. The HOA's private intimidation became public humiliation. Karen Mitchell, the HOA president, was furious. She called emergency meetings, issued new media conduct rules, and warned residents not to spread misinformation. But it was too late. The world was watching. Daniel's channel grew fast. Each update brought more viewers, more exposure. He showed the letters, the fines, even footage of HOA workers inspecting his property from the sidewalk. Other residents began reaching out privately. They told him about being fined for trivial things: flower pots, mailbox flags, Christmas decorations. Daniel realized he wasn't alone. Oak Ridge Meadows had been under quiet tyranny for years. But Karen wasn't done. She escalated. Security cameras were installed facing Daniel's yard for community safety. HOA maintenance trucks began parking outside his home for routine inspections. Every move he made was monitored. Still, Daniel refused to back down. He continued filming, narrating each absurd moment. And the more the HOA tried to silence him, the louder his story became. Across the internet, his videos were shared, reacted to, and dissected. News channels picked up the story. The HOA was now under national scrutiny. But in Oak Ridge Meadows, tension thickened. Some neighbors started receiving letters warning them not to associate with Daniel. Others were threatened with fines if they appeared in his videos. A quiet war had begun, a war between one man's right to his own backyard and an association built on fear and control. And as the HOA tightened its grip, Daniel prepared to hit back harder. Because the moment they locked his gate, they unlocked something far more dangerous: his resolve. By now, Daniel's story had become more than a neighborhood dispute. It was a movement. Millions watched his journey unfold. His calm narration, the quiet defiance, it resonated deeply with everyone who'd ever felt powerless against authority. But inside Oak Ridge Meadows, Karen Mitchell was furious. The HOA's reputation, something she had guarded for years, was unraveling fast. She vowed to reclaim control, no matter the cost. Behind closed doors, the HOA board held emergency sessions. They drafted new fines, new amendments, and new threats. They called Daniel's actions public harassment and labeled him a community disruption. Letters turned into legal warnings. Then, one morning, Daniel woke to the sound of heavy equipment. Stepping outside, he froze. His backyard fence was being dismantled. The HOA claimed it was unsafe. In truth, it was retaliation. And the cameras caught everything. Karen standing there, clipboard in hand, overseeing the demolition. That single clip, uploaded with the title, "They Destroyed My Fence," became one of the most viral HOA videos ever made. The outrage was instant. Thousands demanded investigations. Hashtags trended overnight. Karen's calm, authoritative image crumbled. She was now seen as the face of HOA abuse. News reporters showed up at the community entrance. Residents hid behind curtains as the world descended upon their perfect streets. But inside, fear began to fracture the HOA itself. Board members questioned Karen's leadership. Some quietly resigned. Others leaked internal emails showing how far they had gone to suppress Daniel. Daniel, meanwhile, didn't gloat. He continued filming, methodically, factually. His narration grew heavier, more determined. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore, he was exposing a system. Then came the lawsuits. Legal experts reached out, offering help pro bono. They believed the HOA had violated property rights. Daniel's case could become precedent, a warning to abusive associations everywhere. Karen, cornered, refused to step down. She filed a counterclaim accusing Daniel of defamation. But public sentiment had already turned. At community meetings, residents began voicing their own frustrations. Some admitted they had lived in fear of the HOA for years. For the first time, the silence that had kept Oak Ridge Meadows compliant began to break. By the end of that month, Daniel's videos had over 10 million views. Journalists called him the man who stood up to the HOA. But the story wasn't over. The HOA still held power. The legal battle had just begun, and Karen had one final move left, something that could either destroy Daniel's case or the HOA itself. The next phase of the war was about to begin. And it wouldn't just decide who controlled a backyard, it would decide who controlled freedom. Every battle has a moment when the line between order and chaos disappears. For Daniel Carter, that moment came one stormy afternoon in late September. By now, Oak Ridge Meadows was no longer the peaceful neighborhood it once pretended to be. Cameras lined driveways, residents whispered in hushed tones, and the HOA boardroom lights burned late into the night. The once pristine lawns now symbolized something different: control, fear, and the illusion of unity. Karen Mitchell was unraveling. Her once flawless public image had been replaced by online memes, news clips, and angry interviews. Her name had become synonymous with HOA corruption. But she wasn't ready to surrender. She believed if she pushed just a little harder, she could break Daniel's spirit, and in turn, reclaim her authority. She issued one final order, a special enforcement clause. It gave the HOA power to enter and inspect any property under review. To the public, it was legal jargon. To Daniel, it was a declaration of war. The next morning, Daniel's security cameras captured HOA maintenance workers stepping into his yard again, without permission. They carried clipboards, measuring tapes, and cameras. The footage was damning. The internet erupted once more. Daniel uploaded a video titled, "They Came Onto My Property Again." It was calm, factual, and devastating. Each frame exposed how far the HOA was willing to go. Lawyers, journalists, and even politicians began weighing in. Then, something unprecedented happened. A county property inspector arrived unannounced, sent not by the HOA, but by the local authorities responding to the viral case. What he found shocked everyone. The HOA had no standing legal authority to restrict Daniel's access to his backyard. The lock, the chain, the citations, all of it was unlawful. In front of the cameras, the inspector cut the chain himself. The gate swung open with a loud metallic crack, a sound that felt like victory echoing through Oak Ridge Meadows. For a brief moment, everything was quiet. Neighbors peeked through blinds. Karen watched from her car, pale and rigid. Daniel didn't celebrate. He simply stood there, staring at his reclaimed yard, the grass overgrown, the deck half-finished, but it was his again. The footage of that single moment spread faster than any other. The video titled, "They Finally Unlocked My Backyard," shattered records across YouTube. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was a symbol. But the war had left scars. The HOA's reputation was destroyed. The community divided. Friendships fractured, trust broken. And as the chain fell away, something much larger began. The fallout that would change Oak Ridge Meadows forever. When the truth finally comes out, it doesn't bring peace, it brings consequence. After the inspector's ruling, Oak Ridge Meadows plunged into chaos. The HOA board, once united under Karen Mitchell's authority, splintered into factions. Some demanded her resignation, others tried desperately to salvage the association's image. But the damage was beyond repair. Residents who had once stayed silent began to speak publicly. Stories emerged of unjust fines, harassment, and manipulation. People admitted they'd lived in fear of HOA retaliation for years. Daniel's lawsuit, once considered a long shot, now had real traction. Lawyers cited the footage, the documents, the inspector's report. The case became a national talking point, symbolizing a new era of homeowners standing up to overreach. As media vans crowded the neighborhood entrance, Karen tried to hold one final meeting to defend herself. It ended in disaster. Half the attendees walked out. The rest voted to remove her as HOA president. That night, Karen emptied her office at the clubhouse. No reporters saw her leave, no neighbors waved goodbye. Her reign over Oak Ridge Meadows had ended, not with applause, but with silence. Meanwhile, Daniel continued to film, not to gloat, but to show what change looked like. His updates were calm, reflective. He spoke about community, resilience, and how control can hide behind politeness until someone dares to question it. The neighborhood began slowly rebuilding itself. New board members were elected, ordinary residents who promised transparency and fairness. The strict decorum policies were suspended, and the HOA bylaws were rewritten to protect homeowners instead of punishing them. But healing took time. For every neighbor who apologized, another still avoided eye contact. For every reform, there were memories of how easily fear had taken hold. Daniel's backyard, once a battleground, became a symbol of freedom. The deck was finally finished. The hot tub installed. On weekends, he sat there quietly, watching the sunset over a fence he rebuilt himself. The viral story faded from headlines, but its impact remained. Across the country, homeowners began questioning their HOAs. Videos surfaced from other neighborhoods, people inspired by Daniel's calm defiance. Karen, now living several towns away, refused interviews. Her name would forever be linked to the HOA scandal that shook suburbia. But Daniel's story wasn't just about one victory, it was about a shift. The world had watched as one ordinary homeowner proved that sometimes all it takes to fight a system is a camera, persistence, and truth. And while Oak Ridge Meadows tried to return to normal, something fundamental had changed. For the first time, people no longer feared the letters in their mailbox. Months passed, and Oak Ridge Meadows entered a quiet new chapter. The lawns still gleamed, the fences still matched, and the mailboxes stood in perfect rows. But this time, the perfection didn't come from fear. It came from choice. Daniel's story had become legend. His channel, once a small outlet for frustration, turned into a global platform for homeowner rights. His calm narration, thoughtful insights, and unwavering persistence inspired thousands to challenge unfair HOA practices across the country. Other residents began sharing their own stories, some heartbreaking, some triumphant. Together, they built a digital community of voices too loud to silence. Meanwhile, Oak Ridge Meadows transformed. HOA meetings were now open and transparent. Decisions were voted on publicly. Fines required clear justification. For the first time, the homeowners felt ownership, not just of their houses, but of their neighborhood's future. Daniel's backyard stood as a living reminder of what could happen when ordinary people refused to be controlled. The deck was sturdy, the garden thriving, and a small plaque hung near the steps, engraved with the words, "This space was once locked by fear, but opened by courage." He rarely talked about Karen anymore. Some said she'd moved to another suburb with a new HOA board. Others whispered she'd sworn never to join another one again. But in the end, her legacy became the cautionary tale that fueled a movement. As seasons changed, Daniel often found himself reflecting. He hadn't set out to be a hero or an activist. He'd only wanted a quiet place to relax after long workdays. But when they chained his backyard, they awakened something powerful, a truth that resonated with millions. Control thrives in silence, but it crumbles in the light. And so, as the sun set over Oak Ridge Meadows one evening, Daniel stood on his deck, listening to the gentle hum of his neighborhood. The fences glowed golden in the fading light, the air still and peaceful. The world beyond his backyard had changed, but it all began right there, with one locked gate and one man who refused to accept it. The camera rolled one last time. His final video opened with a simple line. "They tried to take my backyard. Instead, they gave me a voice." The screen faded to black. And across the internet, millions nodded silently, knowing that in their own ways, they too were unlocking their backyards, one story at a time.